Let's talk through the basic mechanics of a squat. There are a few things that no matter which kind of squat you're doing, body weight, back squat, dumbbell squat, they're going to be the same, and there are some things that are going to change slightly. Now, first of all, there's no perfect squat mechanics. People are different, our bodies are built different, our kind of tendencies and our tightnesses are different, so there's a few things we can adjust throughout this, and there's a few things we want to make sure we do no matter what. First thing that is variable person to person, and even day to day for each person, is the width of their feet when you squat. You want your feet to be, your heels to be hip width or a little wider. Going more narrow is a very specific kind of squat that is different from your conventional squat. So at least hip width, if not a little wider. I prefer a little bit wider. Now the toe angle, the majority of people can't squat with their toes straight forward. Some people can. They can have their feet right here, toes straight forward, and they go deep down and do a squat. I would say the majority of people are not that way. So most of us, our hip sockets are actually turned out at an angle. How much of an angle varies person to person. Some people, they're really far out. Some people, they're actually in a little bit more. So you'll kind of find, as you're warming up and doing squats, what angle works best for you. I generally have people start between a 15 and 25 degree angle, not so far as 45, that's a sumo squat, but somewhere in that degree area, and just see what feels comfortable. The next thing is you want to really ground your whole foot. There's a lot of cues out there that aim to help people keep their feet flat, either by saying, push your hips back further, that keeps people on their heels so their heels don't come off the ground, or chest up. That's usually people are going back too far, they say chest up, and really they just mean shift their weight forward. We're not gonna follow any of those cues. Instead, we're gonna start from the bottom, the foundation, and stabilize the way up, and then let our body move through that. So I want you to take your toes, I want you to spread them wide, set them down on the floor. Feel the ground of your heel, your big toe, and your little toe. That triangle is gonna be your base of support. You want all three of those points to feel strong and weighted into the ground. I even kind of push the knuckles of my toes into the ground, so I feel the weight is in both my heel and the balls of my feet. Keeping those strong. And if you notice, if you actually do that, my knees move a little bit when I tighten my feet. So people who tend to have their knees cave in, actually a lot of times if we stabilize and ground their feet all the way through, it actually straightens out their knees too. So you're gonna ground yourself. You're gonna tighten your core by using the kettlebell or inner abdominal pressure by going or and feeling that nice tension here, not sucking the stomach in. You're gonna sit down and back up. The depth of a squat depends on the person and the aim. Going, as they like to call it, butt to grass squat, all the way down. Not everyone can do this. I would never do this with a load on my back or really heavy weight, because when you go that far down, no matter how good your form is, if you go this far down, your back has to curve. There's a few people I'm sure in the world who can be perfectly straight spined and down here. Majority of people can't. So you're not gonna really try to go ass to grass, as they call it, or butt to the ground. We're actually just trying to get past parallel. Now, a lot of the research tells us that for knee health, deep squats are not bad. Actually, stopping at parallel to where the hip is parallel to the knee, just this spot, is actually worse than going just below it or just above it. So if you find that you're a little tight and you can't quite get down below parallel, it's okay to stay just above parallel. Many people argue about whether you're getting the full benefit, you're getting the full muscle growth, you're getting full utilization. I'm gonna be honest, for the majority of us, it doesn't matter. If you're getting a squat and you're not hurting yourself and you're getting stronger and your body's happy, that's what matters. So if you can go to below parallel and come back up, awesome. If you can't, just try not to hit right at parallel. Stay a little bit above parallel. Best way to do that is to put a box or a bench or something so that you make sure you're not going too far, just hitting that parallel mark. Okay, we got feet. The next is the knees. Again, when we set the feet, usually the knees follow pretty decently, but ideally we want our knee just to stay in line with our toes. So whatever angle your toes are at, your knees go with it. This counts for sumo squats too. If you're doing a wide sumo squat where your knees are, or your toes are really far pointed out, your knees have to go with it. So when you squat, just make sure that your knees are in line with the middle of your foot, not your big toe, because that'll have it cave in a little bit. Not your little toe, right down the middle. The next thing that gets debated a lot is how far forward should your knees go? This is another thing that varies person to person. I have long tibias, which is, I'm kind of a rarity in that. Some people have long femurs. So I have long tibias, which means if I want to squat all the way down, I need lots of dorsiflexion. I have lots of dorsiflexion. So my knee might go past my toe. If you watch the Olympic weightlifters, their knees go past their toes, but their feet are flat to the ground and they're able to push up from that position. When coaches tend to say, don't let your knees go over the toes, there's two reasons usually. One is that someone's heels are coming up when they squat, which just means they either don't have the ankle flexibility or they're really quad dominant in all their movements. When you go up onto your toes and squat down, you're not really getting your glutes. You're mostly just using your quads. That's just a different kind of squat. That's not the squat we're talking about. There are squats that are like that, and I have people do them. That's not what we're talking about here. So as long as your feet are flat and your weight is even on your foot, if your knees go past and it doesn't hurt and you're not having knee problems, it's totally fine. It's when we get leaned forward into the balls of our feet, even if your heels aren't really fully off the ground, but if your weight is shifted forward into the ball of your foot, you'll feel more tension in your knees because they are taking the majority of it. Instead of splitting the work between your quads, hamstrings, glutes, you're now forcing your knees and your quads to take the majority of the work. So we don't want that. Something you can do is if you have a problem where your heels keep coming off the ground or you find yourself shifting forward in your weight, is to just lift your heel off the ground. They have wedge lifts, or you can just put a 5-pound plate underneath both heels, something that's like 1 inch to 2 inches. And then you'll find that you can squat all the way down. Your knees will go over your toes though. That's okay. It's fine. So knees can go over toes. Core is tight. If you notice, I kind of lean forward. Now again, I have long tibias, so I have to make up for that with different mechanics. You need to lean forward a little bit, especially if the weight is on your back. You need to lean forward. If your hips are moving backwards, something has to counterbalance it. Knees will come forward, but those aren't really weight a lot. So we want to keep the center of gravity right in the middle of us. If I keep my chest up and try to squat down with my hips, my toes come off, my center of gravity is now back here. It's out of my base. So keeping the base of support right in the middle of your foot, you have to lean forward just a little bit. Ideally, they say in a back squat, your shin and your torso will be parallel. Mine will not, because I don't have those proportions. That's not how I squat. But ideally, for most people, that is true. So don't be afraid to lean forward just a little bit. And really, you don't need to think about how you're leaning forward. Just tighten your core. And that will tell you, because it will keep you straight. You just want to avoid arching through your low back. I see people who hurt the low back squatting actually doing this more often than curling like this. I think we all got a little scared of hunching our back as we squat, but we just want to keep the curve we had. Arching more actually compresses the spinous processes sometimes, and it can pinch nerves. It's just really not a good position. You want neutral. Our spine is made to be in neutral and take lots of impact and lots of loading. But when you get it out of neutral, whether that's forward, backward, whichever way, the vertebrae are now off kilter and then pressing into each other versus being straight up and down how they're used to be. So, tight here. Let the knees come forward. You can do hands out here. You'll be holding weight, whatever, as long as this back keeps a nice neutral arch. And you can feel that by doing this. If you put one hand on the front, one hand on the back, you can feel, oh, am I dumping or am I arching as I go? Some people go like this, trying to keep their chest up. Not what we're going for. We just want to keep a nice neutral. I find looking about 3 to 4 feet in front of me is really strong. Up and down. Now, if you put weight on your shoulders, if you put front squat or dumbbells or kettlebells, you do need to keep your chest a little more upright. So a front squat or a front rack squat will be a little more upright. I find I don't go as low when I do that. I think that's pretty common. Some people can do it perfectly, some can't. Back squat, you're gonna find your tendency is to lean forward more, so you're gonna have to fight that just a little bit. The lower you put the bar on your back, the less you're gonna fight that. If you're holding weight just at your chest, again, you're gonna find your tendencies to lean forward, so you need to keep it up a little more upright. Really, the weight doesn't change your form drastically. Your form should be about the same no matter what weight you put on it. If your form changes drastically when you put weight on it, it's too much weight, or it's the wrong weight, or you just have mobility issues that you need to go work on and come back and try again. Those are the basic mechanics of a good squat.